while I was there preparing to give my talk, the keynote, actually, the conference.
Yep, the plenary.
The CDC went through this charade. And it was, it was thoroughly absurd, right? Did you see the video of the votes?
No, I didn't watch the video.
These were Zoom gatherings with person after person masked on their Zoom call, presumably from their own home. Right, these are true believers.
Oh my God.
Who have now recommended...
Or they know it's theater.
I think these were true believers. It's worth looking at the video.
But, I mean, true believers in... Wow.
True believers in the cult that is now doing so. And here's the crux of it, right? I feel like this recommendation actually crosses a boundary that for some, they will follow it across, but for almost anybody who's still got any independent mental capacity at all, the idea that with a disease as age stratified as COVID in the hazard it poses, and a vaccine age stratified in the other direction for its hazard, the absurdity of recommending these vaccines for children is unmistakable.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is, I know you haven't read it yet, but this is exactly what I was writing about in Natural Selections this week. It is exactly this. I mean, this is actually a piece that I had written many weeks ago. And I was like, I'm just looking for the right examples. And we got two of the right examples with regard to trans and with regard to childhood vaccinations this week. And I was like, okay, there it is. Yeah.
But at some level, this is now an unmistakable atrocity.
Yes.
Right? We are not talking about an ambiguity. We are talking about recommending treatments that are dangerous, and in fact, most dangerous for the population in question here.
Yep.
We're talking about denying people education for refusing them. For behaving reasonably, we are going to deny people education? That is like ghastly at an incredible level that this would happen to children. And then for the CDC to play its game, well, we're not requiring these things.
We don't have the authority to do requirements.
No, we're not. Heavens, no, we're not requiring.
Many of you had never heard of us before COVID, and now we're on the tip of everyone's tongues, but we certainly don't have any authority at all. How could we? Look at us.
All we did was recommend. If the states are going to,
you made recommendations
injure
that
your
weren't
children,
followed?
that's the state's problem, right? Yeah. It's just like, it's amazing. And even just the mind-blowing fact of, okay, let's understand the CDC. Let's take it more or less at its word.
Why? Sorry, but why would we do that at this point?
Because it is its own reducto ad absurdum. Okay. So if the idea is, well, the CDC is just making a recommendation, the states, of course, make their own judgments. That's, why wouldn't the CDC under a democratic regime be, a championing states' rights, right? It's, okay, absurd on its face. But now let's imagine that the states do what they are apparently going to do. You've got a bunch of rebel states that aren't going to recommend these things. Mm-hmm. And you've got a bunch of states that are going to engage in the usual slavish devotion to authority and are going to require them. So now you've got a patchwork country in which the inexplicable, completely unnecessary harm to children is going to be done on a state-by-state basis. Those people who have the means to move themselves out of states are going to have an advantage over those who are condemned to stay in the state that they are in because of a job and the need for it, or who knows.
I mean, and this in sort of with the opposite political valence. This is true with regard to reproductive rights, with regard to abortion, right? So,
Absolutely.
we've always had the division over things like the Second Amendment, over reproductive rights, over death penalty. But now, for the election that's in a week and a half, we've got abortion and now childhood vaccination against COVID on everyone's minds, and there are a lot of us who find ourselves pulled in opposite directions by these two things, by knowing that many states are going to go stupid on COVID and preserve the right to at least early term abortion for women, and that other states are going to preserve the right to early term pregnancy termination for women. Or did I say that twice? Did I say the same thing twice? Either way, like stupid on COVID and to my mind, smart on reproductive rights, or the opposite. Like either way, you've got to take one thing that is not sane, and it's not. Compassion is overused and it's weaponized, but it's not compassionate.
Well, I mean, I'm afraid it's worse than that. To the extent that what we have are ideologies, political ideologies or political banners, and that these banners essentially have an incoherent package of beliefs that comes with them, things that actually are not inherently related to each other.
Right.
But right. My team believes these things and not those things. Yeah. And that this is now going to become a geographic phenomenon where we are losing the agreement that holds us together as a nation. This obviously leads in the direction of some sort of dissolution of that nation, which is of course a extremely short-sighted catastrophe and leaves lots of us stranded, right? Stranded where we would like to choose where to live, as is a constitutionally protected right. We would like to choose where to live based on things other than the ideology of the governance structure. That is the exact opposite of living in a free country, where the ideology of those in power in your state is such a profound influence in what you can and cannot do and how you will and will not live, that it might cause you to have to move between states. I can't believe we're here. It's really stunning.
Yeah, and both of these happened this year.
Yeah,
and those in power in states, both in red states and in blue states, are making decisions that are causing people to flee. And now it is quite clear that we've got political things running in opposite directions with regard to the slate, to the teams that have been agreed on. And this is in part the problem of a two-party system. There are a lot of us who, for us, we've always voted blue. But there are a lot of people who've always voted red who are now going like, I can't do that anymore, but I can't go blue. And I've always voted blue. I can't do that anymore, but I can't go red. Like, where are the options that actually represent careful, nuanced thought and care for both individuals and recognizing that we live in a society and are going to need some society level protections? Like, where is that party? Where are those politicians? They exist like one person here, one person there. We got Tulsi Gabbard saying, I'm done with the Democrats. But it's not, as far as I know, she didn't say I'm becoming a Republican, because like that's not an option, right? Like, neither of these parties is an option anymore for a very large number of us.
All right, so two more points. One, the division, and now increasingly geographic division, right? Profound enough to cause you to move rather than just grumble at the people who run your state. That thing is also causing the loss of nuance in the positions. Even the position that is closer to your own has lost nuance, because the point is the people who constitute a natural break on the perspective aren't in power enough to matter, right? And so in other words, if it's one party rule in each state, right, then what you get is, look, I'm not comfortable with the blue team's complete abdication of responsibility over reproductive rights. As I've said many times, I believe the right to an abortion exists, and that right decreases through the...
You said blue team.
Yeah. The blue team seems to think it's sophisticated to imagine that there is nothing morally interesting that happens at all until the moment of birth. And the point is, well, I don't think any rational rational person believes that. But if the idea is you have to choose between, sacred zygotes.
The 2 points, conception and birth, are the only moments in a human life that matter at all in discussing whether or not abortion should be allowed. No, sorry. Someone else set those as the 2 moments that are the ones we have to be talking about, and neither of them is the right one.
They're both intolerable. Yeah. And I'm not saying, I actually think that the religious perspective is tolerable at the individual level. An individual can believe that coherently in a morally consistent way, but you can't apply it across a population where religious beliefs vary, right? That's not acceptable. What's more, as we talked about before, the idea that the sacredness of zygotes is such that you have to, that women have to carry the product of rape to term, right, is bonkers, because the point is this actually generates a strategy for rapists. It's not what it's not what you do. So the lack of nuance on both sides is a disaster, and the idea is that now we're going to have to pick your poison, like which bad philosophy do you want to live near or live under, is not a good thing. So anyway, the CDC made its move right before I gave my talk, and I felt compelled, actually. What kind of person would I be if I saw an atrocity, a slow motion atrocity unfolding in front of me, a medical atrocity, and I didn't say so at a medical conference? So I took the risk, and I told them exactly what I thought this meant and exactly what it implies about where we are in history, and didn't know how that was going to go over. But it actually, I got lots and lots of positive feedback over it. I may at some point make that piece. As you know, I don't ever write a talk in advance, right? I may have notes and know where I'm going. In this case, first time in my life, I wrote it out word for word. It really needed to be precise. So anyway, that was interesting. Interesting that the conference, a medical conference full of people who, I can't say that they all shared the perspective, but enough of them did that, the feedback was not, you're a crazy person, but it was, whoa, thank you for saying that.
Just to be clear, it wasn't mostly allopathic doctors. It was mostly naturopaths and osteopaths. Right?
Yep. It was a heterodox conference for sure. But, I don't know what the total number was. A lot of people were remote. There were hundreds of people in the room. I think there was 1,000.
Yeah, more than 1,000. Yeah, who were attending some way.
In some way. So anyway, that was fascinating.